Welcome to this explainer. I gotta tell you, I am absolutely thrilled to share this one with you today. We're gonna be looking at an ancient text and uncovering this profound hidden meaning that, honestly, it completely changes how we read a foundational story. We're digging deep into the etymological mystery of the name Yosef, or Joseph. We're literally peeling back the layers of ancient Hebrew letters to reveal a totally different destiny, written right there directly into a name.
Okay, let's dive into this. For centuries now, we've been handed this very specific, pretty much universally accepted translation for the name Joseph. We've always been taught that it's just a simple active verb meaning to add. But what if it doesn't actually mean what we think it means? What if that common translation is entirely missing the massive hidden weight of the word?
So back in Genesis 30:24, Rachel has just given birth, and the text says, "And she called his name Yosef, saying, 'May Yahweh add to me another son.'" Now, history has traditionally just accepted this right at face value as a simple numerical addition, right? Rachel has one child, she wants another, 1 + 1 = 2. The Hebrew word Yosef is sitting right there next to the idea of adding a son. Seems like an open and shut case, doesn't it?
Well, actually, not exactly. The textual evidence points to something completely different. That literal translation, "he will add," is actually what we call a scribal gloss, basically a translation artifact. Think of it kind of like an ancient game of telephone. Rachel isn't interpreting the root of the name herself here. The text is just providing an interpretive association, and that just sort of got cemented when these texts were translated into Greek and then eventually into European languages. So to actually solve this mystery, we've got to look away from those later translations and look directly at the ancient Hebrew letters themselves.
Let's break down the core root of the name, which is built on two letters, Samekh and Pe. Now, this first letter, Samekh, carries incredible semantic weight. You have to remember, in ancient Hebrew, every single letter carries deep meaning. Samekh holds this inherent essence of sustaining, supporting, and holding in place. It's really a static force of stability. You can think of it as the phonetic sound of what is firmly established, fixed, and held completely secure so it doesn't collapse.
Now we move to the second letter of our root, Pe. While Samekh is all about holding something securely in place, Pe represents the side, the margin, distance, or a place set apart. It points to a position right at the extreme edge, the boundary. It emphasizes standing at the periphery rather than being right there in the center. So when something is placed with a Pe, it's not integrated into the main system at all. It's being held at a distance.
So the crucial point is, what happens when you make these two powerful concepts collide? When you combine Samekh and Pe, you get the etymon SF. Together they create this incredibly powerful spatial meaning. To be sustained at the side, to be held at the margin, to stand on the threshold. You see, it's not about numbers at all. No way. It's about a highly specific physical and existential position. You're firmly supported and held in place by Samekh, but you are held on the extreme outside edge by Pe.
And if we look at the broader linguistic evidence, this pattern is just undeniable. Let's look at how this foundational root, SF, interacts with other letters. Whenever you add a third letter or a radical to SF, it universally creates concepts about boundaries, limits, and thresholds. Add a Pe, you get to stand on the threshold. Add an L, you get bol, which is an instrument that stands at the threshold to contain matter. Add an R, you get to counter-regulate, basically setting thresholds between units. Add a He, you get to attach to the edge. The core SF always means that which stands at the margin, sustained at the side. It's fascinating.
This actually brings us to a massively important distinction between two totally different types of adding in Hebrew. Compare sephar on the left with Yosef on the right. Sephar is quantitative addition. The R regulates the thresholds, making it a matter of pure numbers. You're adding a unit into a regulated system, counting it right alongside what already exists. But Yosef, which is the root of Joseph, is spatial addition without regulation. It's not some numerical operation adding to a grand total. It's the physical act of placing something on the margin outside the system, completely outside the count.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how that distinction becomes even clearer when we compare SFH and Yosef. With SFH, sure, you have marginal addition, but that third letter, the hate, represents delimitation. That means you are added to the side of a defined group and you actually integrate into that body. But Yosef, Joseph's root, well, it doesn't have that third radical of integration. The addition is simply placed at the side and sustained at the margin. Joseph is added to a situation, but as you'll see, he is never ever actually integrated into the group. He's like a free electron. Before we apply this to his life, let's just quickly unpack the grammar of his full name. Yosef. The name has a yod prefix and an o vowel. Now, the yod isn't just a simple action verb, it's a theophoric prefix. That means it literally indicates the direct action of God. And that o vowel? It's a passive marker. It means he was made to, or he received the action. This just completely shatters the old idea that Yosef is an active verb, meaning he will add.
Which brings us to the ultimate, true translation of the name Yosef. Putting the whole shebang together, it absolutely does not mean may he add. What it actually means is he was made to stand at the margin by the action of God. Let that sink in. The hand of God placed him on the threshold. This completely reframes our entire etymological mystery. Joseph isn't a numerical addition. He's a child placed on the threshold, sustained at the side by divine action.
Let's move to the narrative and see how this builds. It tracks incredibly perfectly across the entire dramatic arc of Joseph's life. From age 17 with his family, to the darkness of the cistern, to the prison, and finally, all the way to the heights of Egyptian adulthood, Joseph's entire life story is a literal physical manifestation of his name. He is constantly, repeatedly being placed on the threshold. Just think about him as a 17-year-old with his family. The text shows him tending the flock with his brothers, but he almost immediately positions himself as an outside observer, bringing bad reports back to their father. As this verse from Genesis 37 shows, even when he approaches them, they see him in the distance. He's physically present with his family, meaning he's sustained by the Samekh, but existentially, he's placed on the threshold, at a distance, perfectly representing the pay. He never truly integrates. And then, just days later, that distancing becomes painfully literal and violent. His brothers throw him into a cistern and sell him to merchants who drag him off to Egypt. It's absolute distance. Yet, even in this horrific, terrifying exile, his core identity is maintained. He inhabits the ultimate margin, right in the gap between his homeland and his destination. He is sustained at the side, exactly as his name dictates. Years later, he finds himself thrown into an Egyptian prison, and the brilliance of the text shines through again by showing us two distinct layers of separation here. First off, he's exiled from society, confined to the margins of Egypt in a tiny cell. But then inside the prison, he is separated once again. The chief of the prison puts all the other prisoners under Joseph's hand. He's set apart and elevated even among the outcasts. He is quite literally on the threshold of the prison. Inside it, managing it like a highly effective middle manager, but existentially completely separate from all the other inmates. Finally, in adulthood, Joseph reaches the absolute pinnacle of Egyptian power. Pharaoh sets him over all the land of Egypt. He becomes the vital linchpin holding the entire country together through a devastating famine, which, by the way, perfectly illustrates that sustaining force of Samekh. Yet despite all that power, he remains a prominent outsider. He's the ultimate outsider consultant. He's a Hebrew, a former prisoner, standing right at the threshold of the Egyptian administration. He is inside the structure for sure, but he's never absorbed by it, beautifully representing that distancing force of pay. So, to summarize what we've uncovered today, Joseph's entire tragic and triumphant destiny was all about being the threshold. The addition expressed by his name is not about numbers. It's an addition of positioning. He was meant to be placed at the margin, sustained at the side by God, right up until the appointed time when that exact threshold became the place of passage and salvation for his entire family. He regulates the system, but he is never, ever regulated by it.
And this brilliantly illustrates a much deeper question that really goes way beyond linguistics. What does it actually mean to be chosen to stand on the threshold? Being a marginal addition, being placed on the outside of a system, feeling like an observer, held at a distance. It isn't always a punishment. For Joseph, standing on the threshold was a divine appointment. It was literally the only place from which he could ultimately save the very systems he was separated from. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll leave you to ponder that.